Ribbon Blitz! Comparing sizes. Choose an area to visit. Click on an object to start comparing. Which object is larger? Which object is heavier? Which object is longer? Which object is heavier? Which object holds less? Which object holds more? Which object is taller? Which object is narrower? Which object is taller? Which object is lighter? Which object is heavier? Which object is longer? Which object is longer? Which object is lighter? Which object is wider? Which object is shorter? Which object is shorter? Which object is narrower? Nice job! You compared all the objects in the garden. Which object is larger? Which object is smaller? Which object is wider? Which object is heavier? Which object is taller? Which object is shorter? Which object is larger? Which object is lighter? Which object is taller? Which object is smaller? Which object is larger? Which object is smaller? Which object is smaller? Nice job! You compared all the objects in the barnyard. Which object is taller? Which object is heavier? Which object is heavier? Which object is wider? Which object holds less? Which object is smaller? Which object is shorter? Which object is lighter? Which object is lighter? Which object is taller? Which object is larger? Which object is narrower? Which object is shorter? Nice job! You compared all the objects in the kitchen. Which object is taller? Which object is lighter? Which object holds more? Which object is wider? Which object is smaller? Which object is smaller? Which object is heavier? Which object is shorter? Nice job! You compared all the objects in the orchard.